So as we must all know by now, Westview and Bel Air are part of Senate District 15. We were part of Senate District 17. And so Senator John Whitmire is now our senator. We are new to him, but he is not new to the Senate. He's the Dean of the Senate, serving for about 38 years as chair of the Criminal Justice Committee. And as I'm a clinical pharmacist for correctional managed care, and we serve the healthcare needs for the entire state inmate population. So I can personally attest to all the wonderful attributes of Senator Whitmire. He's come to bat for us for healthcare funding. He's a true advocate for our patients and our patients' families. And so you have made a tremendous impact on the healthcare and lives of our inmate population. So I thank you for all the work that you have done in the last 30 plus years. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for sitting down with us tonight. And then we have Molly Cook. Thank you for entering into the world of public service. And as an ER nurse, you saw how bad policies translate into bad outcomes and decided to do something about it. And as a healthcare professional, I truly admire that. And I look forward to hearing more from you. And so that's a brief introduction. And we have a full house, 99 participants. So let's get started. I'm going to give it over to Dana to go over some housekeeping, and then Swati will start us off.
Hi, good evening, everyone. We're so glad you're joining us today. Because we have so many people who have chosen now to participate in this, what we need everyone to do is mute and listen. And then if you have questions, please put your questions into the chat room. We're going to be giving the senator and Ms. Cook 90 seconds approximately for each question for purposes of being able to answer. We will be bouncing these questions as well as follow-ups that come up, but we are so grateful to you, Senator Whitmire. We're so grateful for you, Ms. Cook, for purposes of participating tonight. And now I'm going to toss this to Swati.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's good to be with all of you. Senator Whitmire and Molly, I am going to ask you to tell us about your origin story, why you got involved, and you know what motivates you. And both of you have about 3 minutes to tell your stories. Molly, we'll let you go first.
Thank you so much to the South Asian American Voter Empowerment Texas and Westview and Bel Air area Dems for hosting this candidate forum tonight. I believe competitive primaries are an important part of a component of a healthy party, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to engage in spirited discussion that can help us think through our goals, values, and strategies to shape the future of the Democratic Party in Harris County and across Texas. I'm an organizer, and I truly believe the grassroots orgs like the hosts tonight are who we have to thank for the progress we've seen and who will indeed save Texas. My name is Molly Cook. I was born and raised in the Houston area. I'm a nurse and community organizer. I've been knocking on doors for a long time. I knocked doors and was an office captain in Montgomery County for Beto in 2018. I was knocking doors along I-45 in 2020 when I met Elda. I spoke in broken Spanish and she spoke in broken English. And it wasn't until later when we had a translator present that she was able to thank me and tell me that she didn't know there was anything she could do to save her home from the I-45 expansion until I knocked on her door. Now I'm knocking on doors for a different reason. And I'm hearing from people like a woman in Spring Branch who said her door has never been knocked on, despite the incumbent being there in the legislature for nearly 50 years. My opponent tonight, like all of his mailers, will talk about experience and that experience matters. And I agree, experience does matter, but it begs the question, what kind of experience do you want your legislature to bring? Senator Whitmire has been in the legislature since he was 23. I have experience of being a healthcare worker, making sacrifices to afford my healthcare, renting my home, and grassroots organizing. Senator Whitmire is weighed down by experience, decades of campaign contributions, backroom deals, and protecting personal political capital. As a nurse and community organizer, I bring knowledge of the issues as well as embodied understanding of the challenges folks face. I value empathy, listening, community engagement, equity, bottom-up planning, and honesty. I'm not afraid to do what it takes to bring healing, or to shape change. I'm an ER nurse, but I don't just work with Democratic doctors and I don't just save Democratic patients. Sometimes I have 4 minutes to earn someone's trust and possibly save their life. In my unpaid work, I build relationships across diverse groups to get things done, like stopping a freeway expansion. I have heard that the senator was a reformer, but his choices more recently are enough to make me wonder what happened to Whitmire. His way of doing things is no longer serving our district or our state, and I bring fresh perspective and public health and policy expertise. I would be the first woman ever in this seat, and the
50
senator is
seconds.
running for Houston mayor, saying I can't do this job with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So why have 1 foot out? I'm focused and prepared to place the interests of the district above my own, and I'm already forced the senator to campaign and increase voter engagement across the district. My name is Molly Cook, and I'm ready to be your next state senator.
Thank you, Molly. Senator Whitmire.
Thank you, and thank Ms. Cook. I believe public service is a calling. I think someday we're going to be judged by what we did while we were public servants. And quite frankly, I think everyone that's participating tonight is a public servant, whether you're ever on the ballot or not. We all have a duty to make this world a better place. I was a 22-year-old senior at U of H in 1972 and went by working my way through U of H like so many others. Went by a professor's office and he was looking at a redistricting map. I needed more time on a paper and he asked me where I lived. I showed him. There were a new single member district map being drawn. And I showed him Oak Forest. I went to Waltrip High School. I went to church there. My mother was a nurse at Memorial Northwest. And I made the comment that it looked like they drew that one for me. So I went home and told my parents that evening that I would like to remain out of school that spring and run for the legislature. Now, you talking about divine intervention. My father, mother should have said, you've got the rest of your life, get your degree. But instead, my father said, you might as well. So I started knocking doors. People identified with me because I came out of their communities. So to make a long story short, that began a public service as an elected official. I spent 10 years in the House preparing to go to the Senate in 1983. Served on numerous committees, and then in 83 was elevated to state Senate. It's a different challenge. We have nearly 1 million people in a Senate district. So I served in the 80s under Bill Hobby, who was from Houston. Then 91, I started chairing criminal justice. Criminal justice system was broken in the state of Texas. It was a revolving door. You served 1 month for every year that you were sentenced. We did no classification. We treated everyone the same. Violent offenders were treated just like nonviolent. So I surrounded myself with smart people. We did an expansion program. We went into treatment mode, started classifying. I strongly believe that you only lock up people that you're afraid of, not people that you're mad at. People that you're mad at, you try to treat their alcohol, drug addiction, their mental health, emotional condition, and try to make them a success. We've done that. We're a national model. I've been to the White House and discussed the reentry program that we've instituted in the state of Texas. We're a model. Now, it's very
50
frustrating.
seconds.
And so I look forward to representing the new part of 15. I worked hard to make certain that it was a Democratic district. And let me just say, you're going to enjoy the engagement that I use as a state senator. I know you haven't experienced that in the previous service from your senator, but you're going to really get a breath of fresh air of people. I'm meeting with your mayors, I'm meeting with your stakeholders, and look forward to being a very engaged state senate in the new areas of Bel Air and West U. Thank you very much for having us together tonight.
Thank you. Thank
Senator
you,
and Ms. Cook, we have a very ambitious governor. I think that is clear. And one of the things that our very ambitious governor and a hot button issue for the concept of critical race theory. And then the governor has recently contemplating or presenting to his Republicans an amendment to the state constitution with the parental Bill of Rights. I'm interested in your thoughts relevant to critical race theory, how we address this, since it appears to be a non-issue in the public schools, as well as this parental Bill of Rights. Senator, let's start with you on that topic, please.
Sure. Critical race theory has been around for decades, but not until Donald Trump's hard right positions that it became relevant to the political discussion. We fought it very diligently last spring in Austin. We were outgunned, but Greg Abbott is trying to out-Trump Trump. You saw him in Montgomery County 2 nights ago. He goes as extreme as he can. I think it's just, quite frankly, a diversion from what they're doing to public education. You now see that this Bill of Rights he wants to put in the Constitution is going to allow choice or vouchers. Vouchers would ruin public education in the state of Texas. It would certainly shut down our rural schools. In the urban areas, you do have other options, but in mid-size or small communities, if you allow the students to take their vouchers and go to their church schools, Brenham, for instance, would just lose their independent school district. It is nothing but demagoguery. It's hard right to appeal to the Trump core. Abbott's trying to outdo Sanders in Florida, and it's hurting the state of Texas.
Ms. Cook, let's give you the opportunity to address this as well as it pertains to this critical race theory, as well as this parental Bill of Rights that's being contemplated or being pushed by our governor.
I agree with much of what the senator said. And, he has criticized Governor Abbott for running for president and how that has changed the way that he approaches issues. And I am concerned about the senator running for mayor and how that will change his approach to issues. CRT is talking about that as a distraction from the ongoing siphoning of resources and local control from public school districts. The focus of the ledge should be on funding public school equitably, protecting the rights of all children to play, getting kids insured. We rank last for child insurance rates, improving maternal health outcomes, protecting school children from environmental hazards like unclean air from nearby freeways, and supporting, not punishing, local ISDs.
Thank you. Senator, would you, and just to follow up on what Ms. Cook said, is there anything else that you would like to add in regards to?
No, I just think that we have to not fall into the trap that they used in Virginia to defeat the Democratic nominee. We have to make certain that we recognize parents have a role in the participation of the certainly the school boards and the policies of the independent schools. But it's a hateful message, and that's the reason elections matter. We've got to make up some ground in Austin and get everyone we can to register and turn out and vote, because I don't think that represents the general public. In fact, I know it does. They're only appealing to their Republican core base. They get the nomination, then they think the state is red, and we're stuck with a bunch of right-wing rhetoric that is really harmful. And we'll talk about other issues. The meanness they showed toward the transgender children of the state. I can go on and on. What they put women through in terms of the 6-week heartbeat. I can go on and on. They are carrying out a mean policy, and certainly we need to hold them accountable.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Whitmire and Molly. What you both said really resonated with me. I'm actually going to change topics a little bit, and I want to talk about crime. The crime rate in Houston is the highest it's been in years. We've just surpassed Chicago in terms of violent crimes. We've seen the proliferation of guns, largely due to gun laws that don't protect the general population. Now we're seeing repeat offenders, people out on bond, sometimes multiple bonds, committing murders. How do you intend to keep guns out of the hands of these people who by law should not be in possession of a firearm? And then that's the first part of my question. Second part to you, Senator Whitmire, what kinds of gun-related bills do you see coming up in the next legislative session? And to Molly, what kinds of gun-related bills would you introduce in the next legislative session? And Molly, I'll let you go first.
It's important to be very specific when we talk about the crime wave. What most people mean when they say that is the rate of murders and violent crime are up, while other types of crime, including property crime, which I know a lot of people are concerned about, have decreased. There are various, sometimes competing theories that explain this spike, but one thing is clear: gun sales have increased. Where there are more guns, there's more gun violence. Additionally, when we discuss violence and violence prevention, we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that intimate partner violence or domestic abuse accounts for 15% of all violent crime, and over 2/3 of firearm deaths are suicides. There are people sitting in jail downtown charged with the nonviolent Class B and C misdemeanors awaiting trial simply because they can't pay bail. Meanwhile, murders go unsolved. This is about a misalignment of resources and priorities. In 2011, Senator Whitmire voted in favor of SB 1581, which was concealed carry on college campuses. In 2013, he voted to expand firearm manufacturing in Texas, and in 2017 voted for SB 16 to reduce the application fee for a license to carry a handgun. Two important policies that I would back are limiting stranger-to-stranger sales, which Lieutenant Governor Patrick himself says that he even supports, and universal background checks. The NRA and TRA tout grassroots organizing as the reason for their success. We need a new approach to these issues.
Thank you, Molly. But I would like to say you did not answer my question about how you would keep these firearms out of the hands of these repeat offenders who are out on bond, sometimes multiple bonds. That was my first question.
I would say limiting stranger-to-stranger sales and universal background checks would be an excellent place to start that have bipartisan support.
Thank you. Senator Whitmire?
Last session, I carried legislation for the Mothers Demanding Action, a very effective group. I share their frustration. The red flag bill, where when someone enters an emergency room or domestic court or even a criminal court and they're having an emotional difficulty, through a due process system, the court could apprehend their weapons. We tried that twice, certainly after the Santa Fe disaster tragedy at their school. We did our best in a hearing, and then Patrick shut it down immediately. What we've got to do is hold people accountable that use weapons in the commission of their crime. Remember, I told you we must classify people, and we have the toughest penal code in the nation, which I sponsored in '93. We also have the best treatment program in the United States. But what we have to do is hold people accountable. What we've just recently discovered 2 weeks ago, that bail bondsmen are financing the bond for defendants.
30 seconds.
We have to put that to stop. I'm already preparing legislation that we'll be able to get to the records of the bail bondsmen. And when they finance the bail bond, with the understanding that the defendant will go get the rest of the money and bring it back to the bail bondsman, that is a new enterprise of crime. And it's not just in Houston, it's in the unincorporated area, and it is very much going to impact Bel Air and West U. I think we have to have a zero tolerance for anyone that used a weapon in the commission of a crime. I worked with former Chief Bradford. I talked to Chief Finner Saturday afternoon, and I would not hesitate to have the DPS to come in and run an anti-gang task force. The juvenile gangs are what really are perpetuating most of our crime.
I apologize. We'll probably, if we have time at the end, we'll tack on more to this. But before we get to Neha, I must apologize. Ms. Cook, I kept addressing you as Molly, and I addressed Senator Whitmire, and I should have said Ms. Cook, and I apologize. So Ms. Cook, from here on out, I'm so sorry.
All right. My next question will be on Medicaid expansion. What will it take for Texas to pass Medicaid expansion? All the red states around us have passed it. Oklahoma, Missouri recently passed it. Louisiana and Arkansas passed it a few years ago. And in my world, as you know, Senator Whitmire, this would drastically decrease recidivism rates into our state in prison, because as it stands now, the state prison, mental health prison is basically, the mental health units are basically our safety net for the state of Texas. So what will it take, and why hasn't it happened yet? I'll ask Senator Whitmire to go first.
It hasn't happened because of the Republican control of the House and the Senate and state leadership. We have made progress. The TMA, Texas Medical Association, came out in support last session, and the Hospital Association is beginning to support the concept. What we have to do is get all the stakeholders to demand that we get Medicaid expansion. It would save taxpayers dollars across Harris County because the people that show up in the emergency rooms of LBJ and Ben Taub are people that do not have insurance and have no primary care doctor. Now, here's a little bit of hope. The rural medical facilities are having difficulty because of COVID. I talked to Senator Nichols from East Texas 2 days ago. He said he's had 4 rural hospitals shut down. Medicaid expansion would give them the medical practice that they so badly need in their community hospitals. But everyone's going to have to play a role. We're going to have to speak loud. We're going to have to make it an economic issue as well as a main issue. Get our med center, which we're in the shadow of, every institution there. All have powerful legislative delegations and government relations people. We've got to get everybody singing that we've got to have Medicaid expansion. The problem is the Republicans in Austin identify that with Obama. It would cost us nothing. The feds will pay $100 million over 10 years. But as long as the Republicans are demagoguing and tying it to Obamacare, we've got a really tough job to do. But I'm working on it, but we need the medical community to really get in behind us.
Ms. Cook?
A survey from the Episcopal Health Foundation found that 69% of Texans want Medicaid expanded. And that's an increase from the same survey a year earlier. But less than half of Texas knew that we were one of only 12 states not to expand Medicaid. There's an education gap there. Texans with low incomes, 82%, those who say they are in poor or poor health, 82%, and uninsured adults under age 65, 80%, were among the groups with the highest percentage supporting Medicaid. These folks are my daily patients, and I myself buy my insurance from the individual marketplace. It's incredibly costly. I get it. Texas doesn't have voter-led initiative and referendum, unfortunately, but other red states have had success after flipping governorships from red to blue. Arguably, the most important thing Senator Whitmire could have done to get us Medicaid expansion would have been to donate large amounts of money from his war chest to our statewide candidates, like Lupe Valdez in 2018 and now Beto for governor. In 2018, he gave none, but between July and December of last year, the senator spent $2.4 million on stocks. We're seeing red electeds in red states change their mind about this, even Governor Kemp from Georgia. People are gaining coverage thanks to hard work from people like Senator Johnson. Rural and safety net hospitals are benefiting. This is about reaching people, organizing, telling stories, and holding our legislators accountable. We need motivated, active leadership and someone who understands the issues.
Senator Whitmire, would you like to reply?
Oh, ma'am.
All right, I've got a question. Senator, you've got 38 years of working with Republicans. I think it's fair to say the Republicans that you are working with today are different from the Republicans that you were working with 30 years ago. It seems to me that before there was an effort for purposes of compromise, and today there appears to be no effort at compromise. When you look at SB 1 that's passed, when you look at SB 8 that's passed, we from the peanut galleries don't see it getting better. What do we do in 2023? How do we as Democrats confront these Republicans who are clearly uninterested in compromise?
First, let me state, I look forward to coming back as your senator and spending a lot of time, lots of time walking you through the process and the transition I've seen occur in Austin. It's been startling. And let me just also tell you, there's no indication it's going to get better. There are 5 freshman senators next time. Patrick is handpicking Larry Taylor's replacement, Jane Nelson, chairman of finance. I can go on and on. Redistricting is not going to improve the general representation of the public in the legislature. Yes, what has happened from my vantage point as a senior member in the Senate is the Republican Party has been captured by fringe groups. And I could go through and list a number of them, same ones that carried out the invasion of our national capital. They're present. What I do as Dean of the Senate prior to 03, it was largely just ceremonial. Now I have responsibilities because it's the only caucus that we can bring all 31 senators together and talk. Let me just give you an example. The COVID, social distancing. This time last year, we weren't even sure we were going to be able to meet because of the pandemic. When I brought them all together to decide how we're going to function under COVID conditions, we had several senators still were saying it was a hoax. So I heard them out. Then we came up with social distancing. We were all tested every day and we're very responsible. But I give you that example is that's the element we're working with. They're not Reagan Republicans. They're not George Bush Republicans. They're single shot individuals that win the Republican primary. They go there to carry out a pro-life policy, an NRA policy. They beat up immigrants. They beat up GLBT. They're not
30 seconds.
They are not worried about the outcome. It's the next election, all they care about. I take the fight to them. The experience matter. And let me just emphasize, we're losing several moderate, quote, relatively moderate Republicans. So we've got to be concerned. How are we going to turn it around? Organize, register to vote. The Hispanic proud population has to be more engaged. So we've got to do our part. But it's alarming. It's alarming, and we should be. Patrick stands up there in Montgomery County and says the election was stolen. Abbott will say anything. You got Paxton under indictment. They don't represent the majority of Texans.
Please wrap.
Thank you,
So
Senator.
I want to come talk to you in due time about the process and how we can. We fight them. We slow them down. The Democratic senators are smarter, more organized, but we're still outvoted because of the sheer numbers. And redistricting did not help us, except I got some great new areas.
Thank
This is
you.
Sharmella. I'm the timekeeper. Just to give you a heads up, I know we didn't kind of walk through it. We had 1.5 minutes for each answer. We've now increased it to 2 minutes. I am trying to give you a heads up at 30 seconds to the end goal. So just keep your ears open for that when I say 30 seconds. And please do try and wrap up in the last 30 seconds. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm passionate.
Thank you, Senator. And Ms. Cook, we know that you are very passionate about this issue as well in regards to what are your thoughts, your plans, your ideas you may have if you are a fresh face in the Senate for purposes of dealing with these people on the other side of the docket from us, relevant to Republicans and what kind of strategy you're putting together in that respect.
I would ask if maybe a new kind of Republican requires a new kind of fighter. And it's interesting that he points out the Hispanic vote is missing because his website is still not in Spanish. But I work in a fast-paced, high-stakes environment every day, and I don't just work with Democratic doctors and patients. My job is about earning trust and knowing how to work on teams. A Republican doctor told me just Friday he'd be willing to tell anyone that I'm a pleasure to work with and complimented my consummate performance. Grassroots organizing focusing on issues over party. Healthcare, broadband, schools, state preemption of local control, and transportation are all areas that rural folks and urban folks can probably align with hard work and with care. I even have a bill to stop sacrificing our property tax dollars to corporate developers that I'd be thrilled to support that Senator Betancourt's. The opportunity is there if we choose to do the work. I've had conversations at Texas Transportation Commission meetings with rural folks and with Republican folks, and we agree TxDOT can't keep acting the way it does. That's an opportunity for alignment. In 2003, the senator said that he would come back first to negotiate across the aisle, and 2004 was a sweeping loss for us. In 2015, he said he would use his seniority to keep them from changing the rules, and they immediately changed it from 2/3 to 3/5. And in 2021, he stayed behind and even says himself it was the worst year yet. Working across the aisle can't look like going along to get along. It should look like work, and I'm willing to do it. Senator Whitmire is quoted as saying, I try not to bring bills that are time consuming if they aren't going to get traction. That shows that he's not interested in moving the needles. He's interested in protecting political capital. We don't need a backroom dealer. We need someone on the front lines working in the community.
And Senator, let's give you the opportunity to follow up to that, please.
Let me just emphasize, if we're going to fight the Republicans the way we've been fighting them and continue to fight them with their hateful legislation, you've got to have a senator that's on the key committees. I'm on finance. I fight them for funding for Houston, TSU, Prairie View, U of H, medical school, law school. You've got to be in play on the Business and Commerce Committee if we're ever going to get weatherization. I make them talk about global warming. I make them talk about we haven't prepared for the next freeze, which today I even got a bulletin from ERCOT. They're concerned with this freeze that's going to be here the remainder of this week. Chairing criminal justice. They come to me and I get to talk to them. Talk to Ann Johnson, someone that I know y'all elect and trust, who's endorsed me in this race. She had a brilliant idea to have 3 temporary courts to take care of the backlog. She came to my office to help organize the effort to get that passed. You've got to be on the right committees and have the seniority and experience that people listen to.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit again and talk about the environment. Although there was something that you said, Senator Whitmire, that, you know, I wanted to push back on, but I want to get through all of our questions first.
Sure.
So Houston has, Houston's air quality is among the worst in the nation. And we have never met federal standards for smog. We understand the negative impacts all of this has on health. And now, and I know overall in Houston, our air quality is poor, but I'm going to talk specifically about this district in 15, where we have this interchange of 59 and 610 that has now expanded. What are the plans to offset the carbon emissions from the increased traffic that we are going to have in the middle of this district? That's one question. And then the other question is about CO2 sequestration, because, you know, Texas infrastructure is ripe for it. And I know that we've done a little bit, but why have we been so late to the table? And what can we do to do more? And
Well, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You can go first.
No, elections matter. And I'm going to continue to repeat that. I mean, the TECQ is a board appointed by Governor Abbott, before that Perry, before that Bush. So when we lost our statewide positions to the Republicans, we really suffered a setback. I have 100% rating by the Air Alliance. I'm involved in clean air in terms of preventing the batch plants. It took my seniority to stop a batch plants in the African-American community of Acres Home. We're fighting a landfill currently in Carverdale. What we've all got to do is first recognize the problem. If we don't acknowledge the problem, and I'm talking to Mayor Friedberg and Mayor Sample, and we're discussing not only clean air, but the infrastructure of drainage. So we've got our work cut out for us. We've got to encourage industry to continue to invest their resources. U of H is doing some outstanding research on carbon recapture. So having this dialogue and going forward into the legislative halls and educating folks, but it's tough when you are dealing with the TECQ. The Environmental Protection Agency is showing much more aggression and aggressive discussion under Governor Biden, President Biden, but we've got a lot of work left to do.
And Ms. Cook, just a second, I want you to answer the question, but Senator Whitmire, you keep saying you're on all these committees and that's what it's going to take, you know, your leadership, being on these committees. Yet if you run for mayor, we lose all of that. So how is this a
well, first of all, let's just, if you're ready to discuss that. First of all, I was approached by people from Senate District 15 to consider it. I said no. Then they started talking about the crime issue, infrastructure, other things. I said, okay, let's talk to others. We talked to others and it took off. The mayor's race is not on the ballot this time. This is the sessions 23 the mayor's race, the next mayor will be in 24. And I even actually saw someone that may be a candidate for mayor. It's interesting to me that everybody just assumes I'm going to win. I'm doing nothing different than wanting to go back to Austin and fight with my seniority, finance, business industry, criminal justice, dean of the, that seniority doesn't belong to me, by the way. It belongs to you. And you ought to use it in 2023 to the betterment of our community. The same model I'm discussing is Sylvia Garcia, who did an outstanding job in the impeachment hearings, was a senator, ran for Congress. Rodney Ellis was a senator, went to commissioner's court. Sylvester Turner, Sheila
Okay.
Jackson Lee, Kamala Harris was a U.S. senator, ran for
30
president.
seconds.
Senator Whitmire.
You go where you can serve.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Now I am going to let Ms. Cook answer the question that I had asked. Ms. Cook, do you need me to repeat it or are we good?
I'm ready. Thank you so much.
All right.
So
Thank
we obviously, we obviously need to decrease car dependence throughout the state. And some interesting things that are B-sides for most folks in Harris County are things like population growth modeling assumptions from the HGAC TPC, the Houston Galveston Area Council Transportation Policy Council. Those are very basic assumptions, things that we can all have an effect on from the state legislature that are flawed. Things like a catch-22, where you assume horizontal growth, and so you widen more freeways, so then there's more horizontal growth, so you keep widening freeways. We have to address the root causes and assumptions of these issues that are failed and are biased toward continuing down our car-centric paradigm. Additionally, the senator voted to prohibit localities like Denton from banning fracking, in 2015, and has a history of vehicle emissions testing moratoriums, supported raising taxes on electric vehicles. There's a list of issues. Additionally, in his off-the-cuff interview recently, he says that he wished he struck back at Hancock when he was stopped from talking about climate change. I would say the same thing. So one thing that we could do is expand SEP, supplemental environmental projects, to include air quality. Those are missing right now. So even if your project plants trees and recapture CO2, it can't serve as an SEP. We need to conserve prairies and wetlands, which would be good for the environment and good for flooding. And we need penalties for taking out large trees and stopping development in our floodways as well. There's a lot of opportunity in Houston for cleaning up air quality, but we need a leader who's willing to go toe-to-toe with Republicans and TSEC to hold corporate polluters accountable so that no worker's employer is also their neighborhood's worst polluter.
Ms. Cook, Senator Whitmire had quite a bit of extra time to talk about, the environmental questions. So please, you've got more time, and I would love to hear more about how you would work with Republicans on some of these issues, as they've been so unwilling to budge. So if you could share a little bit more about some of your ideas and how, and your strategies to get them to agree with you.
And I will say I wholeheartedly agree with the senator's sentiment that the extremist Republican legislature is not representing Texans' real views. So to me, the work and the opportunity there is among the people, is among shifting power to the people through community organizing, focusing on issues where people can align rather than parties where they don't align. I'm thinking about, like I said, conversations about transportation at the TTC meeting. Folks from Austin are mad about 35. Folks from San Antonio are mad about Broadway. We're mad about I-45. El Paso's mad. Dallas is lucky to have a pretty progressive MPO and deputy engineer from TxDOT, but every city is mad, and so are the people in small towns. TxDOT wants to build bypasses around their towns, which would decrease sales revenue from folks driving down their main streets. So I see real opportunity there to travel the state, to build those coalitions, to beef up the already existing statewide coalition for TxDOT reform. And I know that that only scratches the surface of issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding voter engagement. The last legislative session had the worst voter suppression law come out of it. And both of you have talked so much about voter engagement, but how do we do that when we have this Jim Crow 2.0 and basically decapitating our efforts? How can you and how will you inspire people to register to vote, to come out and talk to these committees, as both of you have stated? Ms. Cook.
It's organizing, and I have a fantastic record of organizing. People need to feel represented. People need to feel seen and heard. People deserve to have their doors knocked on. People deserve to be served and cared for in the language that they prefer and the ways that they prefer. It is up to us as leaders in our communities and up to our elected public servants to stimulate that engagement. The senator recently is on record as saying that the lack of young Hispanic voters or labor not being as powerful, of working folks missing elections, is the reason for poor voter turnout. I would argue that the buck stops right here. It would be my job and my pleasure to be responsible for voter turnout in the district and to do everything that I can to support groups just like the three that are hosting tonight on this call and inspiring their own communities to go out to advocate for themselves, to make decisions on behalf of their community. And I will again point out that by joining this race and doing it right, have already engaged the voters more in this district than have previously happened for decades. I will also point out that my website is currently in Spanish and we're working on more languages, and the senator's is still in English. So I am truly, truly committed to community organizing, to civic engagement, to empowering the district, and to getting out the vote. Thank you.
The good news tonight is when you listen to me, I have a record. And people that have observed Austin legislature for years have made a decision. They've screened us, whether it's labor, whether it's GLBT, Black Democrats of Houston. I can go on and on. The major groups that look at voting records and activities in Austin know the importance of my returning to Austin based on seniority and experience. What we have to do is let people know elections matter. These are not a plaything. These are life and death decisions. I'm not on the ballot, quite frankly. It's everyone that's participating tonight. We go to Austin together. I like to use an example of fighting a landfill. When you fight a landfill, everyone gets involved. You have a town hall meeting and you just pack an auditorium. You have to make every election like a landfill. And quite frankly, the Republicans are trying to make a landfill out of our state capital. You have to put a face on elections. You have to talk about health care. You have to talk about criminal justice and transportation. We need a regional mobility plan that is environmentally sensitive. You can't let people think it's just a popularity contest, because it really needs to be issue oriented. And in terms of getting involvement, you've got to build coalitions. You've got to let people not be divided, as some would have us do. You got to bring us together and have people register and turn out to vote and let them know elections matter and experience counts.
We have lots of questions in the chat. So I am going to ask one last question and then we're going to get to the chat box. And this is for both of you. And I want you in 60 seconds to tell me, Senator Whitmire, you've had 38 years in Austin.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me how we in District 15 should have faith in you that you will push a democratic agenda and be our representative, even though you may be considering running for mayor. Tell us why we should put our faith in you.
Because I told you, I believe public service is a calling. I am dedicated to my job. I have 6- and 8-year-old grandchildren. I run government for their future. That's the test I'll put it to. There is no reason to have my experience if you don't use it. We have major challenges. Next session will be worse and meaner than the last one. They have not stopped. They're emboldened. They're carrying forward. They did controlled redistricting. They've got the courts on their side.
I
30
understand.
seconds.
You've been there for 38 years. What makes it?
Because I have a record. You can look at my record of
What
accomplishment.
makes this next year different? Why will it be different if we are voting for you? What will make it different for us?
Because I'm going to have bail bond reform. We're going to have bail bondsmen responsible for the crime that we've got. I chair the committee that will hear that. I will build coalitions with our local officials. Carol Alvarado, who did a 15-hour brilliant filibuster. Ask her, she's endorsed me. I was there to help her carry out that responsibility. I got the rules changed. They were not allowing senators but ask her one question.
Thank
At
you.
6 in the
Thank you
morning,
so much.
I got
Thank
to
you so
ask her
much,
more
Senator
questions.
Whitmire. And to be fair, I'm now going to ask Ms. Cook,
Sure.
why should we put our trust in you, as this is your first foray into public office? Why the Senate? Why not a city position? And then we're going to go to the questions in the chat.
Through my work with I-45, I've interacted with the city, county, Houston-Galveston Area Council, the state legislature, and even the federal government. The Texas Senate is where I see the greatest need to combat state preemption of local progress. I'm not scared of money, and I'm not scared of power. Additionally, I could not stand by and watch after Senator Whitmire announced his true intentions for 2023. Experience matters, but you have to ask yourself, what kind of experience do you want your legislator to have? Because I have policy experience and a strong educational background, but I also have the kind of experience you can't buy. I have experience feeling unheard at public meetings. I have experience clocking in and out at a job that seems impossible because our state refuses to care for the poor and the unhoused. I've experienced sexual abuse and been harassed by employers and coworkers. I've experienced and felt deeply stigmatized by my abortion. I have experience in building grassroots coalitions and understand the power of an organized and ignited electorate. I am a woman. I get things done. And I'm going to do this work with or without election. But look at what I have valued and look at what I have accomplished with no money and no staff. Imagine what I could do, what we could do from the Texas Senate. You should vote for me because I get it, I care, and I'm ready.
Thank you. Thank you both. And then Dana, if you'd like to read some of the questions in the chat. I think you're muted.
All right. In regards to some of the questions in this respect, we're a collection of frustrated Democrats, as you well know. I mean, Ann was a huge win. Our previous senator, obviously, as you had noted, Senator, has not been a win for us and largely non-responsive. What are your thoughts, both of you, in terms of trying to get more Democrats engaged? What you can do in your capacity, either of you, as elected for purposes of getting more Democrats? We've been hearing forever that we're going to be turning blue, that we're not a red state, we're a non-voting state. What can we do, or what are your thoughts in this respect?
I think you do what you're doing tonight, and I applaud you, and certainly your diversity that's represented here, is coalition building. It's going and working hard and letting everyone know that elections matter. These are life and death decisions that politicians make. It's not a plaything. It's not a popularity contest, but we have to get young people involved. We have to get minorities involved. We have to continue to double down fighting the Republicans and letting everyone know that elections matter. In '98, I think it was, Sheila Jackson Lee had me, Sylvester, who was a state rep, Gene Green, the North Side elected officials. We met in '98. And Sheila was concerned. There wasn't a lot of energy in the African-American community. And I spoke up and I said, why should they be excited about voting? We're reducing their benefits. We're locking up their men. You've got to let people know elections matter. You've got to give them hope. You got to let them know that you're listening to them. And then you've got to show them that we give them results. We don't win battles on the Senate floor. We're outgunned 18-13, but we stay there all night. We challenge them. they were not going to give the second chance for 17-year-olds until starting in 2022. I got up and gave a passionate speech, reminding them that they pray to a Lord every day that gives people second chances. They made it retroactive. They had in this voter suppression, the original version, a stranger poll watcher was going to be able to videotape individuals voting. I got up and told
50
them,
seconds.
you can't do that. These are domestic violence victims that don't want anybody to know where they're living. And you're going to videotape them in their precinct. You've got to take the fight to them and hold them accountable. And that will get people to follow you to the polls.
Molly, let's talk, Ms. Cook, let's talk about that as well. You worked on Beto's campaign. He went to every county. He still lost, came close, still lost. What are your thoughts about getting Democrats engaged, involved, to the polls?
I think a really important shift that needs to happen is around trust in our elected officials. Some of that depends on campaign finance reform, or at least a commitment to ethics and transparency. And we need to be really responsive. When you listen to folks, they can tell when you take their comment and put it in the shredder box. And we need to be responsive to them to build that trust. We need to work overtime for the most granular level, the folks who are at the center of this, regular, everyday people, working people, young people, whomever it is. And then we need to fight for things like online voter registration. I commend Senator Carol Alvarado for her hard work on that. And Senator Whitmire is not listed anywhere as a co-author on that legislation. We need to be willing to fight. We got to be willing to do whatever it takes. And if that means breaking quorum, that means breaking quorum and not staying behind while they slam through hateful legislation. As I've said already, I'm committed to organizing, I'm committed to building trust, and committed to getting out the vote, as we've already demonstrated through our campaign.
For both of you, here's a question, and thank you both. What would you propose as a way to increase the adoption of electric vehicles in SD 15 and throughout Texas?
I think we have to work with industry, and I have been working with CenterPoint. We're actually talking to Buc-ee's about putting some charge stations. Essentially, we talked to Buc-ee's about 6 at his locations. He said, well, when I do it, I want 50. We've got to get industry involved. We've got to make an economic issue and certainly a clean air issue. So I actually am very encouraged about it, quite frankly. With Tesla coming to Austin, I think it's going to do a lot to make it part of the conversation in the state of Texas for electrical vehicles. In fact, I think an electrical truck is going to be exciting. The Ford truck will allow you to run your house for 2 days during one of Greg Abbott's freeze outs.
Ms. Cook.
Based on that answer, I am curious why he supported raising taxes on EVs. But while I am supportive of switching from fossil fuels to electric vehicles, we cannot act like EVs are the answer to our transportation problems or to our climate change problems. EVs are still single occupancy vehicles. They still will not reduce traffic, and they will not necessarily make us any safer. You still have a person behind the wheel. It's really, really important to emphasize the class disparities in access to to electric vehicles as well. We have to talk about public transit. So while I am supportive of making it easier for folks to drive EVs around, adding charging stations, lowering taxes on EVs, and providing incentives for those things, I really don't like to talk about them without talking about public transit and first mile, last mile, because that will have a real impact on climate change, a real impact on reducing emissions, and also allow us to stop extracting the things that we need to create these batteries that come from other countries. So I just want to point out that we really have to shift the paradigm around single occupancy vehicles to make and shape the kind of change we want to see in Texas in a way that's sensitive to those who cannot afford to drive a car. Thank you so much.
Welcome. And I want to go back to the gun violence question that I had asked. And particularly Senator Whitmire, because I I want to push back on two things that you said. You started off the event saying that, you lock up people you're afraid of. To me, that's a bit divisive. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to tell us what you mean by that. And secondly, you talked about anti-gang task force because it's juvenile crimes that are driving up our crime rate and the gun violence. I'd like to know where you found that and why you think it's children and why children should be in prison. So because those just, I don't know if I heard them correctly or incorrectly, and they didn't sit well with me.
Let me address the children in prison. When I did the reforms in 2007 of the juvenile justice system, we had 5,000 youth locked up at 10 locations in rural locations in Texas. Today, after reforming that package, it's down to 600, and I've closed 5 facilities. Furthermore, we've closed 10 adult prisons in the last 10 years due to my treatment reforms in dealing with mental health. The gang task force, DPS task force, how that came about was I got $1.8 million. We have, particularly in Southeast Houston, a junior high principal that will tell you his worst problem at Scott Junior High is that the gang activity and the fighting and the losing gang comes into the school. So yes, we have to have classification. I do believe, and it's been the model that other states have watched, those that you're just mad at. We have 300 prostitutes locked up in Gatesville tonight. They shouldn't be locked up. They ought to be in their community, taking life skills courses, getting a GED, going back to work, being united with their family. We need to be locking up the person that is making them a human traffic victim. That's the person that we might be mad at as a community. Versus the violent offenders, we're afraid of them. And if you're not afraid of them, you should be. And they're getting worse by the day in Houston, Harris County. They should be locked up.
50 seconds.
So it's kind of the reforms that we've passed in Austin. Have classification. A DWI offender will kill you just like a gun will, but if he's not drinking, he's not a danger to you. That person needs to be in treatment. I've got a program, it's in Henderson, Texas, where if you go to prison for a DWI, the third one will get you locked up for 5 years. You don't go to the fields, you don't go to work every day, you go to treatment. And the recidivism rate is amazing. People can be changed and receive treatment and change their lives.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Cook, would you like to say anything with regard to that?
Sure. I would say that despite bipartisan support and really strong science, Senator Whitmire is still quoted as saying, it's not time for raise the age. And I have a big problem with that. A lot of the closures that he's referencing were due to budget shortfalls. And he knows as well as all the rest of us, that there's an estimated number of 8,000 people in prison in Texas right now for wrongful convictions. So why deny air conditioning? Why talk this way? And, I think it's really important to appreciate the shortcomings of our criminal legal system as we're processing through these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
There have been quite a few questions about the legalization of marijuana. What is your position? Senator, let's start with you in that respect. Is that an issue for traction for anyone, or is it something that is going to be shut down and not addressed by the legislature in 2023?
The House passed Cite and Release, which quite frankly is a good program. Dan Patrick received it in the Senate and would not even refer it to a committee. That's the reason the statewide elections are so critical. As long as the Republican majority's in charge and the statewide leadership's in place, you're not going to have the kind of reforms that you are recommending that I think are needed badly. There's no reason not to have Cite and Release. If you talk to police officers, they essentially do it now. But they're scared because of the video cameras are going to show the prosecutors that they've allowed someone to have contraband and throw it away. So we got a real problem on our hands by not recognizing that, one, it's not even being enforced, and number two, we need to clarify that and have progressive legislation.
Ms. Cook, have you given any thought to the legalization of marijuana and how you would want to address that if you were elected to Senate?
Yeah, absolutely. I would fight tooth and nail to, at least decriminalize, if not fully legalize. It is needlessly giving people records and punishing disproportionately Black people. And we've just seen overwhelming evidence. Additionally, I see patients who use all kinds of substances to try to control anxiety or pain or what have you that are dependence building and can have other consequences. So in contrast, cannabis is relatively harmless and non-habit forming. Additionally, I do believe that some cannabis decriminalization bills did get referred to criminal justice and did not get hearings. So we can fact check that, but I'm pretty sure. Thank you so much.
Senator, would you like to follow up?
No, it just didn't get referred. It was in Dan Patrick's desk the last two sessions, and I would suggest he will not have a hearing the next time.
Thank you.
Are there, Neha, do you have any questions in the chat? It's like it's going by so quickly. I'm not able to catch them fast enough.
I did see a question which I thought was interesting, and it was the talk about the Texas Education Association taking over the Houston Independent School District. Is that still a real possibility? Is there something that we should be doing, can be doing for purposes of preventing that? Where does that stand, Senator?
I think they lost their nerve. Certainly they planned to do it last year from all indications. I think they decided, and I'm speaking for the Republicans, which is dangerous, there would be an indication that they decided to let the elections make those decisions, which quite frankly, local control is best. They got very involved in school board races, won several, but I think it largely depends on our new superintendent. I've met with Superintendent House. I'm impressed. I think you have to give him about 2 years, which he asked for, a window to show what he can do. We've got to make sure he's got the resources and support. So I think the governor and his school commissioner have decided to take a wait and see attitude. I'm more worried about, I'm equally concerned about that, but right now that looks like we've got that in checkmate. I'm concerned about the idea of giving students and families vouchers. That would totally destroy public education. So we've got to fight that. And there's where we have to cross the aisle and recruit Republican rural and mid-sized legislators. It would demolish. We have 1,050 school districts. Some of them in the North Texas have as few as 60 students. If you allowed half of that student body to go to the local church charter school, you wouldn't have a public school system. It would harm HISD, but we've got to get the smaller communities engaged.
30 seconds.
Yes, that's fine.
Ms. Cook, what about the school voucher program? And because that is a wedge issue, and that is an issue that the Republican Party seems to be pushing, what are your thoughts in that respect?
Actually, the senator and I completely agree on all of this. And we definitely need local control and not a takeover. You know, we elect the folks that make these decisions for us. And I'm a big believer in bottom-up planning. So a takeover would be the exact opposite of that. I am wholly in agreement.
I have a question from the chat for both of you. We all want criminal justice reform, at least we hope. For-profit prisons are a stain on Texas. What are your thoughts on corporations making money off of locking people up? Ms. Cook, would you like to go first?
No one should ever profit off of another person's suffering, whether it's healthcare or it's incarceration. It is absolutely wrong that anybody should profit. And I will point out that as the chair of the CJ committee, Senator Whitmire, between 2013 and 2016, accepted $25,000 in campaign contributions from private prisons, some of which are still associated with incarcerating folks at the border. So I am fully committed to remaining transparent, to upholding ethics of campaign contributions and campaign finance so that I can actually represent the will of the people and work against for-profit prisons. I promise never to accept a dime from a for-profit prison.
Thank you.
The private prison industry is disappearing at the state level. They are now into mostly immigrant detention facilities. Unfortunately, that's a whole new industry. The state of Texas turned to private prisons in '93 when people were serving 1 month for every year that they were sentenced. They were able to build quicker, metallic buildings getting going. The ones that still exist are largely treatment facilities, and they can provide some psychiatric and emotional assistance that the state has been unwilling to do. So it's a very small component of the 106 prisons that the state operates, but they did have a service of providing the treatment mode that we needed in our prisons.
Okay, all
All
right.
right, I'm sorry, I'm just, I was muted. I just wanted to ask a question to follow up on that. You said they served more as a treatment facility, Senator Whitmire?
Yes, the operation. They give the specialized care that the addicted inmates need, this in the emotional treatment. When you get in rural Texas, you do not have the professional care that you need for a lot of the mental health services. So the private sector was able to provide the nurses and nurse practitioners in rural Texas. Unfortunately, we built all the prisons in all the wrong places. Dallas, Houston, San Antonio provides most of the inmates, but in the 80s and 90s, when we went into expansion mode.
So let me just ask you then, Ms. Cook said that she would not take a dime, a penny from a for-profit.
I haven't taken, and I don't monitor it, but I haven't taken contribution from the private industry since the dates that she mentioned. Obviously her opposition research is giving her information that I haven't kept up with because it's not relevant. We're not taking those contributions now, nor are we taking NRA money. And when the Republican Party went so far hard right, we just said enough's enough, and we do not receive those contributions or ratings.
That you are not aware of.
No, I don't now.
Okay. Dana, more questions?
No, I think this is a good time to wrap up. Thank you so much, both of you, Senator Whitmire and Ms. Cook, for an invigorating, enlightening evening.
Sure.
Like to give you guys just a minute or so to wrap up for your closing comments. Ms. Cook?
I'll just say one more time, experience does matter, but what kind of experience do you want your legislator to have? I'm Molly Cook. I'm a nurse and a community organizer, born and raised in the Houston area, excited to serve the full term with my focus wholly on the district and spend all 4 years, even the time leading up to the general, engaging folks and turning out the vote. Thank you so much for a really wonderful evening to all three hosts tonight. You guys are amazing. Thank you for the work that you do. It's been a real pleasure to be on.
Senator Whitmire?
Yes, and thank you for having us tonight. It's been very informative, and I hope this is the energy that we're looking for to get people to turn out. The 2023 session will be probably the most important in recent times. If we don't get the crime surge under control, not only in Houston, but across the state, probably a lot of what we talked about doesn't matter if people do not feel safe. And totally reform bail bond. Do away with cash bonds because the violent offenders can still come up with the cash. Do away with the financing of bail bond by bail bond operators. But more importantly, or equally important, is the funding of the finance committee. We're going to get large numbers of dollars, billions, in COVID and infrastructure money. If we don't take some of that infrastructure money and come into Houston, Harris County and deal with the flooding and infrastructure, then we're going to continue to be on edge like most of us were today with the forecast of up to 6 inches. So I want to be at the table. Experience does matter. Contacts matter. Networking matters, and coalition building. So with that, it's a very clear choice. It's your seniority. that it's only my name and it's your seniority that will give you a seat at the table at the finance, business and industry, dealing with weatherization and energy supply, and then for certain to continue criminal justice reform. We've done great things in criminal justice reform, but we've got more work to do, particularly as it relates to women in prison. I came up with the Bambi program to allow women to keep and maintain their babies after they've gone to prison pregnant. We've got facilities where women are raising their children inside TDCJ. One of the more prouder moments of my career.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank y'all. Be safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome. Be safe.
Great job, you guys.
Thank you.
That was very, very informative.
Yes.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you for attending, being part of it.
My pleasure.
Hi, Dana.